welcome to another episode of the Black Diamond Podcast. This is actually the last episode of the Black Diamond Podcast. This is episode 31. Shout outs to Mike Piazza and Dave Winfield. Aaron Hicks, sorry you don't make the cut. Joined, as always, by my co-host, Jerry Durney, and a very special...
You can hold. I got to adjust something real quick here. If I could, hang on.
Oh, brother!
Shout out to the homie athlete logos. That's a fantastic T-shirt.
Yeah, well, I got my Carlos Zambrano beating the shit out of the Gatorade cooler T-shirt, and that's what I and that is what I want to do after seeing that. But you know, it is what it is. We are joined by the podfather tonight, the host of the Middle Initial podcast and the overseer here at the Ascension Podcast Network, Mr. Andrew L. Case.
What's going on, my brethren? Appreciate you guys for holding down the fort for so long for Black Diamond. By name alone, but.
Yeah.
Hey guys, listen. I had a vision, and it just wasn't working out. And you guys stepped up, and he's been doing the damn thing. 31 episodes strong. I'm glad to be here to finally bury it. May it rest in peace, and
yes,
all to better and brighter things.
Yep, that's right. Pun intended.
Oh yeah, I don't know if we would necessarily bury it so much as these are the doves. We are letting the doves free into the air. We're letting the Black Diamond fly on in
yeah, obviously
rest in power.
Rest in power, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, there's one major factor that me and Jerry were lacking, that we could not continue as currently constructed, but we got big things on the horizon. Obviously, 4 to 7 pod will be here before you know it. But before we do that, gotta pay proper homage to Black Diamond, and we figure what better time to do that than the middle of January? Because what does that mean? Well, aside from whatever else is going on, it means that a new Hall of Fame class has been announced. We have the Baseball Hall of Fame class of 2025. It is a 3-man class. We have Ichiro Suzuki, a Yankee legend, another Yankee legend, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner.
Once finished a combined no-hitter in Yankee Stadium, so there's kind of a connection to all three there.
Yeah. So it all circles back, but yeah, Ichiro got 99.7% of the vote. There was one bozo out there who decided for whatever reason to not vote for him, which is pretty ludicrous because I mean, it is the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's not, and that's not just accounting for your major league career, but if you also account for what he did in Japan before he came over, there's absolutely zero reason to not vote him in.
Here's the crazy thing, and I didn't know this until this week. Ichiro actually got left off the ballots of more people for the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame. 26 people did not vote for him. You would think he would have been a lock there. The all-time lock of locks.
Standards are way too high in Japan.
Yeah, I was like, well, if he ain't unanimous, then who was?
Either that, or maybe the baseball writers in Japan are just as good at holding a grudge as the baseball writers here in America, and maybe they were mad. That he left.
He turned down 26 interviews, and they said enough.
Yeah, but to whoever didn't vote for Ichiro, he does want you to come over and have a drink and have a little talk with him. So, yeah.
Well, there's one theory out there that I don't know how valid it is, but normally, if someone doesn't vote for someone, it's to give a vote to somebody else so they can maintain their status on the ballot. I don't believe that was the case this time around, because normally they come forward and say, "Hey, I did this to, like I remember one guy did it to keep Tim Raines on." I'm like,
Yeah.
It happens, right? But this wasn't the case, man. And I do want them to just out this person and just have that whole why, like why be such a hater for what?
It's not a perfect argument, but I do think that's a great point case in terms of, hey, if this guy didn't get 2 more votes, he was going to fall off the ballot, or Billy Wagner was on his last year. I knew Ichiro was going to get in. It didn't matter whether I voted for him or not, but I wanted to make sure Billy Wagner got in. Again, not a perfect defense, and you can poke holes in it, but I would respect that defense more than anything else that they could come up with. Because the one that used to drive me crazy for years up until Rivera got his, which, boy, we talk about character clauses right now.
Oh, no.
But people for years used to say, well, Babe Ruth didn't go in unanimous, so why should anybody else? And I hate that logic, because you're saying, well, because people were stupid in 1936, we have to be stupid now.
Right.
No.
just keep being stupid for 100 extra years.
We're stupid for a lot of other reasons because we were in 1936, but that shouldn't apply here. But anyway.
But yeah, I mean, what can you really even say as far as Ichiro goes? I mean, he won an MVP, 10-time All-Star. He won 10 Gold Gloves, and if the Gold Glove is too much of a popularity contest for you to justify that for how good he was defensively, all the advanced metrics for his defense check out too. Over 3,000 hits. Obviously one of the first pioneers of growing the game in America from Japan. I feel like he was one of the first Japanese players to really come over and really flourish in MLB. I mean, I know there are a few other Japanese players that may have come in before him, like Hideo Nomo comes to mind. If you didn't try doing his windup, when you played baseball as a kid, you're lying. But he was really the first one to come from Japan to really to really flourish and really leave his mark on the game. So that's an absolute no-brainer. And
I think his was interesting because, with the internet now, we know about some of these guys, like Roki Sasaki coming over and signing. Didn't catch anyone by surprise because we saw him in the World Baseball Classic. And if you're good anywhere in the world now, you're going to get talked about. Same with Yamamoto, same with Senga. These guys came over, and when they were good, it was, okay, they're living up to their we were told they were good.
Yeah, we were told they got a butt ton of money. They're doing
back
what they're
then, guys came over, and it was, I think with Hideo Nomo, there had been a little bit of hype where it's like, okay, they tell us this kid's pretty good. When Ichiro came over, I remember the big thing being at his first spring training, there was such a huge contingent of Japanese media that was going everywhere at spring training. I'm like, okay, damn, people I've been to a ton of spring training games. I never see that much media for America at these games. All these people flew across the ocean to come cover some spring training games. He must be important. So I remember that first month, I would always, you get up in the morning, you get ready for school, and you put SportsCenter on. I'm like, all right, let's see what this Ichiro guy's about. And every game he was doing something. And by the middle of May, I'm like, okay, they were right.
Yeah.
This guy's awesome.
Yeah. And it's back then, because he came in, I believe it was 2001 was his rookie season. So back then, obviously he had that hype around him. He had the paparazzi following him around spring training and everything. But with players that come over from Japan now, obviously you hear a lot more about them, through the internet, through Twitter, and you can go on YouTube and look at their highlights. You could go on Fangraphs or Baseball Reference and find out about what their stats are like in Japan.
There's that high school kid that just committed to Vanderbilt who had the Japanese high school home run record.
Yeah, you didn't really have
we wouldn't have known about him.
Yeah, it's you didn't really have as much of it back then. So it's you really weren't finding out about Ichiro until spring training, or like if you're not that dialed in, maybe not even until like, until he actually started playing games in April.
Because 2 years later, when Hideki Matsui came in, it's like, oh yeah, this dude's the best power hitter in NPB. This is a big deal that the Yankees signed him. Like, even before he played a game, there was more of a buildup because Ichiro was so successful that it was, okay, so he's the best overall hitter, and Hideki Matsui's the best power hitter. All right, he must be legit. And then sure enough, he was.
We could say the same thing about Bryce Harper, because Bryce Harper, his legend was written in the Sports Illustrated magazine. There was no video really of him, any word. If you weren't paying attention, if you didn't have that Sports Illustrated and you weren't paying attention to Bryce Harper, and I'm taking it even further back because we had a subscription to Sports Illustrated, and you're hearing of the fact that this kid is 16 and hitting 500-foot bombs into like the desert and all that stuff like that. Like
and now you hear about the high school prospect. Like Jackson Holiday had a lot of hype before he got drafted.
Right. So
that wasn't how it used to work.
Right. Social media, the internet has definitely made it smaller. So there's no more legendary stuff where it's like word of mouth. You get to see it firsthand. And it's like you said with the Sports Center stuff with Ichiro and Nomo and stuff like that. Like you had to wait. Hey, there's this guy in Japan who can really play baseball. And we may have footage of one game if we're allowed, and even a full game, maybe a pitch or so, whatever. And you have to go off of that, and go off the fact that these scouts are flying thousands and thousands of miles to go see somebody pitch or hit, and to come back and tell everybody, hey, we may have found, well, not even the next, we may have found the first. Because that's another thing too. When we talk about these international players, it's not the next anything really. Like the biggest player, I guess, foreign-born in Major League history was Roberto Clemente. Like the biggest one. And going further, I mean, of course, there's a bunch, the Luke family, the Guerrero family, stuff like that. But we're talking about like Japanese players, like Nomo was the first. He was I don't know what you would categorize him as. I guess a Japanese Jackie Robinson, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, it's not a color barrier thing, but it's definitely it's introducing the world to another side of baseball.
I think Clemente probably would be, and I know it's not a perfect one, but I think Clemente was the first Latin player where he was that good, and the rest of the league had to notice, okay, what did we miss?
Right.
Okay, this guy comes from here. Where else should we be looking? Are there other guys? Right. Can we find our own version of that? And we've seen it. It's not that every team has players from Japan and Korea now, but now it is a viable place to go. Of, all right, hey, are you trying to find the next one for your own? Well, you better keep an eye on these guys.
Right. And Ichiro being what he was, like you said, Jerry, he was box office from day one. The arm, the bat. I mean, he didn't have the power stroke, but when he did hit home runs, because I think I read somewhere where Ichiro said, like, man, I could hit 25, 30 home runs if I went for them, but it's just not. It wasn't his game, and people criticize him for getting the hit record for being a slap hitter. Listen, you could butter bread however way you want, as long as it's butter. And the man buttered his bread by getting a bunch of singles. He got on base. I mean, what's the record? 272 hits?
I think like it's somewhere in the 260s, I think, but close.
Right. 262 in 04.
Also, maybe the most impressive stat achieved in baseball history to me, coming over at age 27 and getting 3,000 major league hits. You look at all of the other guys that have done it, they're starting at 20 and 21. He did that at 27, came over and was just great immediately for at least a decade, and then just kept being a solid hitter for close to another decade after that.
Right, which is nuts in itself, because not only did he live up to the hype, I mean, he didn't win a World Series, so what? And this thing with baseball is a team sport, it's not an individual sport. So there's a lot of great guys, great players who've never won a World Series, probably never even gone to one, but lived up to the hype of what he was, carried his nation on his back, and pretty much opened the gate, for other players. I think the only downside of all of this stuff is that if you're from Japan, you're pretty much going to go to a West Coast team for the most part. For the most part.
And you know what was the big reason for why he signed with the Mariners when he did? Because you know who owned them back then?
Who?
the guy who owned Nintendo or did own Nintendo.
Oh,
I think he might have given it up by that point, but he was the owner of Nintendo.
Yeah, the connection.
Nice. Yeah, that's a pipeline. If it was NCAA 25, the pipeline is LA or Seattle or something like that. It's the West Coast pipeline.
Man. But yeah, and like the one thing I would say too, like, you know, if you wanted, and it's like if you want to get on players for, you know, not hitting enough home runs, and if that's like, you know, if that's like your argument like against Ichiro for whatever reason, because like, you know, in today's game of baseball, you know, I do kind of hold, you know, you know, a lack of home runs against a player. Like that's why, like, you know, when there was talks of like Luis Arias like being a trade target for the Yankees, like I had zero interest in that. He's also a terrible defender, but that's neither here nor there. But like if you're looking at like the era that he played in, especially the era that he peaked in, like the early 2000s, like yeah, obviously, you know, that was a you know, obviously steroids were running rampant throughout the game at that point, but throughout the, you know, at that point in time, I feel like hitters that could get on base, I mean, not that they're not valuable today, but I feel like batting average and like getting on base and like hitting singles, I feel like, you know, it went a much farther way back then than maybe it does now too.
Well, I mean, you would have to wonder, and I mean, this isn't his fault either because it was the team that was built around him. But imagine, I mean, I know he got traded to the Yankees later on in the back half of his career, but it's like, imagine if he was on the 2010 team where, you know, he's setting up with Granderson, and then you have Cano and Teixeira and A-Rod and late stage Posada and Matt. Like, imagine having a guy that any starting pitcher knows he can't get out. No matter what he's going to throw, he's just going to take that back up the middle. It would have done wonders. I mean, not that the Yankees needed it, but like for Ichiro's sake, I would love to see what that skill set would look with a team that was a lineup that was truly well built. Because I don't know if he always had that benefit.
Yeah, and I mean the Yankees, you know, the Yankees when they were trying to repeat after 09, they lost Matsui too. So, you know, like had they gotten Ichiro, you know, at that time, because he was still like, you know, he still had like a couple of prime years left before you know, before things, you know, before like Father Time started to catch up to him. You know, he's in like his late 30s. He's in his late 30s at this point. I mean, that could have been, you know, the missing piece to winning you know, winning another title. But yeah, definitely.
Also, I feel like most Yankee fans would have preferred Ichiro over Nick Swisher. I say that on the outside as a hater, but
yeah, I would probably agree with that.
Let's see. He had 2.1 WAR in his first full season, then 0.9. Oh, he wasn't with the Yankees as long. He was in Miami a lot longer than I remember.
Yeah, he was in Miami for 3 seasons, and he was with the Yankees for like a 2.5 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was too at that time. It was too late. It just seemed like a move to kind of appease fans, almost like, hey, we're gonna bring this guy in, and also almost a semi-functional move, because if you look at what he did like the year before he went to the Yankees, he was 2011. He wasn't bad, you know, batted 272, you know, 178 hits. He had 28 doubles, still in bases, 29 stolen bases.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have took that to the bank if you were the Yankees at that time. But you know, actually, no, sorry, he had 40 stolen bases. My mistake. He had 40 stolen bases that year, the year before, at 37 years old. You know, so there was a lot that could have happened. But the beauty of baseball is, you know, you get a guy, you lock him in, like a team like Seattle, you lock him in for a long time. Like you said, came in at 27. If Ichiro was in the major leagues from 21, he would have been a Yankee by 27.
Oh, absolutely.
He would have been Yankee by, and he would have backed up that Brinks truck, and he would have been there, and possibly would have helped them win a couple of World Series, you know. But that's the thing about baseball, man. You know, Tony Gwynn was a Padre for life. You know, Barry Bonds, you know, he ended up in San Francisco, and it, you know, felt like he was a Giant for life, but people forget he used to play for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yep.
You know, a lot of guys have some guys get the opportunity to leave in their prime and go to another team, like Piazza. Remember the whole thing with Piazza? Going from the Dodgers to the Marlins, because I thought we weren't going to get him. We ended up on the Marlins. Oh, we're done. And then the Mets actually went out and got him. And I was like, hey, we're getting prime Piazza, and it was great, man. It was great. It was great for New York, great for Mets baseball. So,
and it was almost as if when Seattle traded him to the Yankees, it's like, hey, look, you should have been in the playoffs more than one time. Right here, this is your gift.
He also got traded. He also got traded to the Yankees during a doubleheader in Seattle. So
that's right.
He was they played game one. He was a Seattle Mariner for game one, and then the trade happened in between games. And then he came out for game two in a Yankee uniform, and there were fans at the stadium that were just like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh man.
And what's going to be cool with all this is that, of course, the Mariners just announced this week that Ichiro's number is going to be retired, because I believe the Mariners have we only retire Hall of Famers policy. And for a long time, people were like, man, why haven't they retired Randy Johnson? It's like, oh, of course, because Ichiro has it too. They got to wait for him.
Right.
So I hope they do that where they both have it on the same day. I think
a joint retirement.
That would be pretty neat.
That would be sick. Yeah. So congrats to Ichiro, a first ballot Hall of Famer. We got another first ballot Hall of Famer, one CC Sabathia. He won a Cy Young in 2007, six-time All-Star. He was a ALCS MVP in the 2009 World Series run, and of course also helped the Yankees win that World Series in 2009. After coming over from Milwaukee, where he was pitching on 3 days rest, pitching in December just to get that team into the playoffs.
Bro, that was, I remember, you just unlocked the memory, bro. I remember CC was just a dog. But now that you mention him, right? Isn't CC just black David Wells?
I think that's doing CC a disservice, honestly.
Body type, throwing power, like the sauce a little bit. Unbutton that top button when they were pitching.
Yeah.
I hope CC's post-retirement is better than David Wells. That's all I'll say.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But no, it's crazy. CC was a beloved Yankee. Of course, I'm, as a Mets fan, always jealous of the Yankees get the guys that I absolutely love, and I love them in Milwaukee. And I thought the Mets would have, should have tried. I don't know if they should have tried to go get him, but I don't know who was in charge at that time. But probably somebody wasn't smart enough to go out and get a.
Oh, that was the first post Madoff free agency, so that was.
We didn't have. Yeah, right. I forgot. Those are dark times, lean times, lean times. But yeah, no, CC was always. I knew when the Yankees got him, it wouldn't be like a typical. Well, not typical, but it wouldn't be like, oh, the Yankees got him too late. I'm like, the Yankees are getting a dog, and that's what he was. Cy Young Award winner, and the biggest thing people talking about, the biggest story was him throwing at who he threw the ball. He threw at
someone on the Rays, and he missed out on I think it was like a $700,000 bonus because
right.
He would have
one more inning.
If he had 2 outs in the inning, but he was like, nah, sticking up for my teammates more important. I'm gonna get ejected. I'm gonna leave the $700,000 on the table. They don't.
Right. So that's bad. That's badass to be remembered by. But everyone's happy for CC, Yankee fan or whatever baseball fan alike. It was for a couple of ass hats, but neither here nor there.
My one old man take. Because I love that Case brought up the Tampa beanball thing. When something like that happens, I love a pitcher sticking up for his teammate like that. I know you shouldn't do it. I know it's dangerous. I get all that. But I think there's something as a competitor when you see your teammate, the guy that you're with every day, and his career is potentially affected because a guy went up and in on him or hit him on the wrist or something like that. There's something that has to be in you oh, damn that. I'm not letting them get away with that.
Oh, yeah. You want to run through a wall for that guy.
And to see CC go out there and be like, well, I don't care about this bonus. I'm getting my guy. and knowing he was going to get tossed, and just immediately turns to the Tampa dugout and goes, "That's for you, bitch."
Yeah.
I can't help but respect that. I don't care how archaic that makes me sound. I will always stand up for that.
Hey, listen, Jerry. I'm still big on beating. I just say keep it below the waist. Just don't go above the waist. Aim for the hips, aim for the ass. Aim for the calves, whatever. Aim for the foot. But yeah, I mean, listen. Unwritten rule of baseball: you go after my guy, I go after your guy, and CC held true, and he went after the guy, and he didn't care about the money. Like, if there's anything to say that epitomizes any type of character of any player, is with money on the line. Because we often think that these guys are just, big braggadocious millionaires and don't give a fuck about the little guy or, whatever. And that's giving that's giving a damn about the little guy right then and there. Like, bro, he could have been like, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. I'm getting this bread. Strike three, you're out. He could have cursed him out on the way to the bullpen, whatever. But he said, nope, I'm gonna throw the pitch behind him, and money be damned.
Yeah, I immensely respect that.
Yeah, and then obviously, and like the thing with CC is like he was, even if he even if like at the end, the tail end of his career, he didn't really have the juice. He definitely like lost a step, but he was just like a dog till the end, in the sense that it didn't matter like how hurt he was always gonna like I feel like the end of his career was like pretty poetic, because I distinctly remember it was the 2019 ALCS against the Astros. Yankees were pretty they were pretty outmatched in that series. They kind of made it, they were able to make it interesting, but at the end, at the end of the day, the Astros are just better than them. We're also, they're also doing some other things, but that's neither here nor there. But I remember, I think it was game 3 of that series. It was at home, and I think it was like third or fourth inning or something like that. CC had been struggling, but he was trying to, like eat a couple innings before getting over to the bullpen. At this point, the series isn't like completely out of reach yet, so you don't want to like. You don't want to like completely burn out your bullpen early in a game like that. So he was fighting, and I remember he like an issue came up with the knee, and I remember him like I just remember like the whole crowd chanting his name while he was like trying to throw warm up pitches before he before he finally took himself out of the game. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that was just kind of like the way his career ended, just kind of like was like a microcosm of just like the type of dude he was. Like he was going to give it everything he had till the bitter end.
One of the last true workhorses. Like there's maybe 2 guys left like that. It's Verlander, Scherzer, and maybe Kershaw at this point. But CC was a guy that you could put in pen every year. I'm going to get at least 200 innings out of that guy, and they're going to usually be pretty quality. And I know I'm going to get 30 starts out of that guy. I can count on him. I'm very rarely going to get an IL stint from him, and I know what I'm getting. And credit to CC as well for being open with his alcohol struggles. Took himself out as the Yankees were going into a wild card game, and he's been pretty open about what it took for him to get to that place and what he felt like he needed to do. And he's never shied away from that. And that's another thing where, can't imagine it's easy being a public figure in New York talking about stuff like that. We've seen how it's gone for other guys in this city with that.
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, this became a problem. It was affecting my life. And I'm going to tell everyone else, this is what you need to do to make sure you don't get here, because that place sucks. And I never want to be there again.
Yeah, I think he was like scheduled to start on the day where he like checked himself in, and I think he had I think it was like a day game in Baltimore. I'm not 100% sure on all the specifics, but I believe it was a day. Right. I believe it was a day game in Baltimore, and I think he had either drank the night before or he was like drinking that morning, and then he was like getting trying to get hot for the game in the bullpen, and I guess like he couldn't do it, and I guess he was either sick or whatever happened, and he was just like, listen, like I gotta go take care of this now. So yeah, and then even after that, he came back, and he had a few pretty solid years where he had a ERA like in the in the threes, which, for a pitcher, in your late 30s, that's like very respectable.
Pitching in the environment that he's in, pitching in that
Right.
division, in those parks, absolutely.
Yeah. A 3 ERA right now would make you an ace in 2025. So
yeah,
100%. Yeah, over 3,000 strikeouts. Almost 3,600 innings. 1.25 WHIP. CC will always be one of my favorite Yankees, and I'm always grateful, for the times we had with him, and when we signed him back in 2009. Last but not least, we have Billy Wagner. I believe, yeah. So Ichiro and CC were first ballots. I believe this was Billy's last year of eligibility on the ballot. He is definitely one of the better closers of the late 90s, like 2000s era of baseball. Obviously there are a few people that you'd put ahead of him, but he's definitely in that elite category. He had 422 saves, a 2.31 ERA. His WHIP was under 1, almost 1,200 strikeouts.
In 900 innings.
Yeah, his 903 innings. His career WAR was 27.7, which for I feel like WAR is like definitely graded on a different curve when it comes to relievers. So that's like a pretty good WAR
for a one inning closer. But
he was always he was always someone, he was always one of those guys you could rely on. It's like if you didn't have, in that era of baseball, it's like if you didn't have Mariano Rivera or Trevor Hoffman or maybe Eric Gagne when he was like insane in the early 2000s,
or like Rob Ned.
Yeah, like Billy Wagner really was like the next best option.
Yeah, never led the league in saves at all because guys were just having better years, like with saves ahead of him, but always solid. The thing I remember the most from Wags is when he, of course, when he was on the Mets, but when he came over that first year, man, he locked the door 40 times, bro. 40 saves for the Mets. It was just like, it was one of those things, and that was a year that they get to the playoffs, and it's kind of rough. It's kind of rough for him. Yeah. He had 3 saves, but that ERA was it was not good.
Well, I mean, it really comes down to that one game against the Cardinals in Game 2.
Yeah,
no Taguchi got him, which kind of swung the series, but
I mean, the dude is just solid. He's a solid closer, and you mentioned some numbers, right? Round numbers normally get you into the Hall of Fame. You mentioned CC's 3,000 strikeouts. 3,000 strikeouts is normally a lock Hall of Fame. It's just the number for saves will be 400 saves to get you in. And I'm not too sure if John Franco ever reached that number. It was just it's just one of those things with the Hall of Fame stuff that these round numbers are supposed to get you in there, but they're not getting you in there. Because John Franco has 424 saves, not a Hall of Famer.
That's where I think closers are more of a feel thing, because it's like if anyone that watched Mariano Rivera, you're like, yeah, that's the best one ever, and we know it. Or it's like you watch Dennis Eckersley, it's like you knew when he came in the game, you were done. I think Billy Wagner fits in that idea of when he came in, you knew it was over. Craig Kimbrell for a long time, because I think his day's probably coming in the next 10 to 15 years whenever he hangs it up. Craig Kimbrell at his very best for a good 5 to 6 years. You knew the game was over when he came in. You look at some of those other guys, and it's like Jonathan Papelbon got really close. He's at 368. I don't think anyone ever felt that way about Jonathan Papelbon, or like Aroldis Chapman's in the top 20. No one ever felt that way. Fernando Rodney's in there. No one ever felt that way about Fernando outside of 1 year. You know what I mean? So closers, it's more of a, we were there and we knew what it meant. Like, I think Gagne would, if Gagne had a longer track record, probably walks in, because he has maybe the best peak of any closer ever for those 2 years. But he just didn't have a lot before, and he really didn't have a lot after. So he just has those 2 years to stand on. Whereas Billy Wagner just did this for years and years.
Yeah, he was definitely the better player for a longer time.
I contend. I think, him and Rivera basically became closers in the same year. And I would say over the amount of time that they were both in the league as closers, that Rivera was the only closer better than him. I know Gagne has those 2 years, but over that span, if ask me for over those 13 or 14 years, who's the best closer after Rivera? I would say it's Billy Wagner, and I don't think it's all that close. I know Hoffman gets in there. I know he's the only other one with 600 plus saves. I would still take Billy Wagner.
Yeah, no, I respect. I can definitely respect that take. I would probably still go with Hoffman over Billy Wagner, but there's definitely an argument for it. I mean, Billy Wagner did strike out more people than Hoffman, and he did have a better ERA and a better WHIP. Like aside from the saves number, which is what they really look at when you're a closer, which might even be a little bit of an overrated stat if you think about it, but Billy Wagner's other numbers are kind of all better than Trevor Hoffman. And Billy Wagner, Hoffman also Billy Wagner also pitched like 100, almost 200 innings less than Hoffman did.
Than a lot of guys.
Yeah, so
I feel like that's the biggest cap in his favor is that he had those strikeout numbers and that ERA in less time.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the margin for error is smaller of pitching under 1,000 innings, and he still managed to do it.
Right, and I mentioned Franco. Franco pitched more games than him and didn't have more strikeouts than him. He didn't even have 1,000 strikeouts, and it goes to show you how good Wagner was, but also the enormous amount of competition that he went up against as far as the saves are concerned, and I think he was hurt a couple of times too in his career.
He was hurt for the last month of 2008, and that's why the Mets missed out on the playoffs, because then it was, well, who do we get to close? And we kept running bum after bum after bum, and we couldn't nail down a game at any point in September, and we ended up missing the playoffs by one game. So, yeah, he was pretty valuable.
Yeah, his worst year, we would say it was 2000 was his worst year. And again, I don't know how many games. I think let's see how many innings he pitched that year. He only pitched 27 innings. That's what I'm saying. Like he didn't have every year he didn't pitch. Even his last year when he pitched for Atlanta, he was an all-star in 2010. So all-star in 2010.
He was still great even at the end.
104 strikeouts at the end. He was really solid as a closer. But again, it's hard to say your best year is 44 saves. It's not a career year when it comes to that. Career year for him, but in comparison to other people who probably had more. But for you to have 44 saves and not lead the league that year, that's the competition that he went against, And who knows? It might have been what year was that? That was year he had 44 saves was
03. Oh, that was the Pete Gagne year. That was the year he didn't blow a save.
Yeah.
Right. So it's screw me, right? Like I'm going against Pete Gagne, right? So it's one of those things when it comes to closes, but he made it in. You guys mentioned Hoffman. I always thought Hoffman was a dog. He's not in yet. It's
no Hoffman's
Hoffman's in. Oh, sorry. The Hall of Fame writers, man, like the guys who get these guys in, I don't know what the rhyme or reason is, but it took Tim Raines a long time. So you remember that?
Oh yeah,
Tim Raines, awfully long time.
And maybe my biggest gripe off the ballots this year, after everything that's come out about him, like if we're taking the character clause stuff into context, and the fact that we've really broke it down and realized that great defender but a compiler on offense. We're still doing the Omar Vizquel thing in Big 2025. We're doing this?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. That
got more votes than David Wright. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it needs to change. It won't change. It needs to change. Hopefully, the dinosaurs just die out and they come up with something new, and we have to worry about the wrong people getting Hall of Fame votes. But I think the most fair Hall of Fame was always going to be basketball's Hall of Fame. It's the most fair Hall of Fame. You know, if you came in, had 8 years of service, and you potentially could have been better, and that's why, because it's not an NBA Hall of Fame. That's the thing. It's basketball, so they talk about your collegiate years, stuff like that. You know, that's the greatest thing about it. I think it's the most fair, and a lot of people get in. A lot of people get in.
International stuff, like
right.
Ginobili
Olympics.
probably gets in on his NBA career because he was really good. But when you take his international career into effect, well, of course, put him right in.
Right. So, you know,
a lot of people get into the Basketball Hall of Fame, but like it also doesn't feel like you know, because like some of the I feel like the NFL and the Baseball Hall of Fame these days, it almost feels like a Hall of Very Good, because a lot of people do you know, a lot of people do seem to get in, and you know, some of them it's kind of like, you know, maybe they just were pretty good for pretty long, and they just, you know, they compiled a lot of stats. You know, I feel like you don't really get as much of that in basketball. I feel like, you know, everyone who gets in, it's like, all right, like, yeah, no, that was like someone who was elite in the era in which they played.
Yeah, I mean, with baseball though, they had a standard at one point in time, right? If you play first base, you hit 400 home runs, you're in. You know, you're Jim Tomei, you're in. If you're a starting pitcher, I mean, you get over. If you don't get 300 wins, but you get 3,000 strikeouts and 250, you know, you're Mike Messina, something like that, right? You get in, right?
CC might be one of the last 250 guys that gets in,
right? And that was about to be my next point. Now, who's going to be the next guy who goes in and gets 3,000 strikeouts? We may not have, like, there's guys who, I mean, maybe Kershaw if he's close.
I think Kershaw's like less than 10 away. I think.
Right, he might be like, we're reaching the point where the new Hall of Fame is going to be. And I'm not gonna say it's watered down, because you're gonna get guys who are gonna deserve it, but they're not gonna have those round numbers that we're used to. You know, the 400 home run first baseman, the 250 or 300 home run second baseman. But you have a guy like Jeff Kent, not a Hall of Famer. You know, doesn't make any sense.
To be very interesting case is once he's done, Jacob deGrom. From anybody who watched him pitch and looks at the accolades, yeah, he's in. He doesn't have 100 career wins yet. That to me is going to be the biggest litmus test: is can these voters reconcile? Okay, he didn't win 100 games. We know that wasn't his fault. We all watched him. We know how good he was. Like, or is it going to be are we going to stick to like the old, you know, the Wilbon line of I don't care, win the game? Because if we're going to stick to that, we're not going to have a lot of starting pitchers going in.
You can't win the game 0-0.
Right. Right. Like the man had a sub-2 ERA in modern baseball, and is like, I'm leaving with a no decision. Yeah. You know, like it's going to be the eye test, the people who are there, you know, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully all the curmudgeons, you know, I mean, I'm not wishing them to pass away, but you know, when that time eventually comes and they're no longer around and they have a new influx of people who get to vote, hopefully it starts to change. You know, say, hey, maybe we need to go back and just like take a look at some of these guys who aren't in. You know, I wouldn't mind the steroids era asterisk guys in. You know, you don't have to give them a whole parade. Hey, you're in because by our guess, you're pretty good. And you cheated and your numbers got beefed up, but you were still pretty good, you know.
But you're also cheating in the era where everyone else was too. So,
and we were okay with it until Congress applied pressure.
Right, until the Balco hearing, and everybody was fine with it. And then on top of that, and just to touch on that real quick, the only guy who really fell off from that era was Brady Anderson, right? Like Sammy Sosa was still Sammy Sosa, you know.
Yes.
Bonds was still Bonds. Yeah, there was guys who were still hitting home runs, still doing what they were doing. I would even argue that McGuire was beat up anyways, but he was beat up. Like, I don't think people realize. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying. I don't think people realize how old McGuire was. Like, he was playing in the 80s. Like,
yeah.
I probably attribute more to the steroid stuff is look at the Mitchell report. There's a lot of scrubs on that list. You still have to be good to do this.
Right.
It's like you not just put the needle in you and all of a sudden you're an all-star. It's like, no, you still got to go do the stuff.
Right. This is not Michael Jordan secret stuff.
Yeah, like steroids isn't going to help you like see a 99-mile-an-hour fastball better, or like it's not going to help you like guess a pitch better. And I don't think steroids would even necessarily turn like a warning track fly ball into a home run. I think what steroids does is basically just like gives your body more longevity and more strength to, just kind of grind through like a 162 game season.
Absolutely. And I think
Right.
I think a lot of people miss that. I think people equate one thing with the other, and that's not I think that any of the guys who have ever fessed up, they've all basically said it's some version of, I was just trying to get back fast.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard a guy who was like, yeah, I thought I could cheat my way. It's like, no, I kept getting hurt. I wanted to play.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, this is from the sport that was allowing amphetamines when guys were taking uppers and downers and greenies and stuff like that. That was perfectly legal, So there was a lot that players used to do just to have that advantage because they wanted to stay awake. And then when they were too wired, hey, I need to go to bed. I need to go to sleep for this game tomorrow. So if you ask all the old players about uppers and downers, they'll tell you. And I think probably the best person to talk to about stuff like that is Keith Hernandez.
Oh yeah, he saw it all.
Yeah, he's probably the best, and he did it. He saw it. He's not embarrassed about it to talk about it. I think he's probably the best person to talk about, what happened in baseball and during those times, and how he feels about the steroid era. I don't know if he looks at it as if they cheated or whatever, but you got to have a look at it and say we can't deny these guys Hall of Fame because they were doing something to stay competitive in an era where, and again, Mark McGwire is the one who introduced it with the Andro,
which was legal at the time.
Which was legal.
Over-the-counter supplement.
Which was legal. And a lot of kids were in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Doing Andro, to get that advantage until it was like, Mark, the kids are doing this stuff. Like, we really can't promote.
Like, when it ever came out that Hank Aaron did greenies,
right?
I don't think anyone would look less of him it's like, he still had to hit 40 home runs a year, every year for 20 years. Like, that's how he got it. Because everyone always says it's impressive that he had the home run record and he never hit 50 in a year. You still have to go do that.
Right.
The fact that he took greenies just to make sure that he was ready to go wouldn't change anything in my eyes.
Right. Right. And baseball's a demanding sport, especially back then. It was even more. Even more back then. It was more grueling than it is now. But especially with travel and everything like that, and of course, if you were playing in states that didn't allow Black people to play, and you had to go sleep at different hotels and different accommodations, yada yada yada.
Like retraining the way they do now, where you're better built to withstand the rigors of it.
Right, and that's funny, Chris. And it's crazy to see that these people were, I guess, the top athletes of that time, like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? And these guys right now just seem like they can't do a damn thing. Like, these guys are just like they're always hurt or banged up. I can only go 6 innings. What do you mean throw 100 pitches? Like, I'm on a pitch count.
It's like all-star 30 years ago, John Kruk.
Right. John Kruk was all-star. Oh, I love baseball. I love it.
Now it's like you get someone built like Vogelbach, and it's like, get this fucking bum out of here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was me. That was me. You must have read my tweet.
I stand with you.
Danny Burgers. So that rounds up the Hall of Fame class. Now we'll play a little game. Let's pretend that we are the baseball writers of the future, and whoever's time it is to perish from this earth has perished, and it's up to us to come up with our own Hall of Fame ballots. So I'm going to show a picture here of the there it is, the 2025 Hall of Fame ballot. So you can pick up to 10 people. Who do you guys got?
Well, I mean, I definitely have the 3 that are already in.
Agreed.
I would include Felix Hernandez on there. I value peak, where
agreed.
If you were able to do it for a 5 to 7 year stretch, and everyone in baseball could agree, yeah, at his very best, you didn't want to face that guy, or if you knew you were facing him, you knew you were in for a long day. Felix Hernandez, right out of the gate, was that guy for a long time. Came up. He and I are the same age. I graduated high school the same year he debuted. And just immediately everyone knew, okay, yeah, he's the goods. I think Felix is in, even if the back half of his career kind of brings his numbers down a little bit. Andrew Jones should be in, and we were talking about that. I think were we on that? Or
yeah, pre-recording.
Andrew Jones to me is the best defensive center fielder in my lifetime, and I think the back half of his career gets held against him, and it shouldn't. There was another one who came in at 19 years old, made an impact for a Braves team that was trying to win World Series. To me, he's in. I put Manny and A-Rod in. I know it's not going to happen. I know the stances aren't going to soften up anytime soon, but like I just said, baseball was okay with it until they weren't. And Manny and A-Rod are, if they're not the two best right-handed hitters of my lifetime, I mean, certainly Miggy and Pujols are there too. They're certainly in the discussion. I would put Torrey Hunter in there because I've said Andrew Jones is the best defensive center fielder I've ever seen. Torrey Hunter's second. And if you look at his numbers, an even better offensive player than people remember. I think people remember the web gems and the catches and all that.
Yeah.
Someone that you really had to deal with at the plate and very nearly had over 350 homers and over 200 steals. I think just missed on the steals. I think Torrey Hunter's got a much better case than I think most people realize. I would have Carlos Beltran in there. I like that he's trending up, and I think we'll probably get in the next year or two. I was kind of surprised that he is because he was the only person named publicly on the Astros, the trash can report, because he was retired. I didn't know how much that was going to get held against him. It looks like he's going to get in. One of the best Met position players I've ever seen. Another guy who made playing center field look easier than it is. And I'm rounding it out because it's my ballot. I'm putting David Wright in there. I know it's not going to happen. I know he just barely kept himself on the ballot this year. I know that, but you're asking me, number 5's on there.
Hey man, it's your ballot. No one can take that away from you. And I pretty much agree with everyone that you included. Obviously, I think all three that got in definitely deserved it. Manny and A-Rod are surefire to me. Probably won't happen for reasons that we discussed, but I think it should. And then I think Beltran definitely deserves to get in. For my last, for the only thing I might change is instead of, and I'm not saying David Wright shouldn't get in one day, but the only change I would make, since this is my ballot, is I would put Andy Pettitte in over David Wright. Although you could argue, that you could make the argument that David Wright, had more of an impact as an everyday player, but Andy Pettitte was just a gamer, and every fifth day you knew that he may not have even always been the ace of those staffs for those Yankee teams in the 90s and the 2000s. And he goes to Houston for a few years, comes back. He may not have always been the ace of those staffs. He may have never even been really the ace of those staffs, aside from maybe in 96, 97, maybe he was, but you always knew that you were getting, a quality outing, a professional outing from Andrew Eugene Pettitte.
The most reliable playoff starter during that run by far.
He also if you value postseason, as small of a sample size as postseason is, when you're in the postseason every year, that sample size starts to add up. And, so that definitely, I think, has to get taken into account too. So, for the sake of bias, I would put Pettitte in. Torrey Hunter, I think, is definitely, Torrey Hunter is definitely a good one. But just for the sake of being a little different, I would add another pitcher to my ballot, and I'd put in Mark Burley.
Ooh.
I think Mark Burley, I think he only got 11% of the vote this year, and maybe it's not his, maybe this year wasn't his time, but I do think Mark Burley does belong in the Hall of Fame, and hopefully he gets his shot to get in there before
I do like that.
Before his time is up.
Someone that you always knew. I think he had a streak from his rookie year. He threw 50 innings, and then after that, he never pitched less than 200 until his final year, and even that year, he threw 198 and 2/3. So for pretty much the length of his career, you knew you were getting 200 innings. You knew you were going to get a quick worker. You generally were going to get 6 innings, sometimes 7. You would never have like that top 3, top 4 Cy Young vote season, but you were never going to get a bad season from him either. And I think, especially era context matters, I think there's something to be said for, you knew this guy was probably going to be one of the 10 to 15 best starters in your league in the AL when it was so incredibly competitive. I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know if I would put Mark Burley in, but I understand the people who do vote for him. I think he has a legitimate case.
For sure. What about you, Case? Who's in your class of 2025?
I'm going to go off the beaten path and some names of players I've watched and appreciated. I feel like they are Hall of Famers. First off, Bobby Abreu. Give it up for Bobby Abreu. Not a big numbers guy, right? But Bobby Abreu had 400 stolen bases in his career. Bobby Abreu did not look like he was built to steal 400 bases.
Yeah.
He had 400 stolen bases in his career. A triple-double guy, and for me, the triple-double in baseball is, 20 home runs, 20 doubles, and at least 10 triples. He did that twice. And once led the league with 50 doubles. A very consistent hitter, 395 on-base percentage. He didn't hit a lot of home runs, but if you're hitting 500 doubles, almost 300 home runs, 400 stolen bases, he had some years we struck out a lot, but didn't strike out, more than, the next man, right? Like that extreme, never led the league in strikeouts. And he played a hell of a lot of games. Bobby Abreu is definitely one of the guys you love to hate, but he's one. Another triple-double guy, Curtis Granderson. Now, Granderson doesn't have the exact same numbers as a guy like Torrey Hunter, especially when it comes to like defensively. But what hasn't Granderson done at the plate? What hasn't he done? If you break it down, triple-double guy. Remember in Detroit, 23 home runs, 23 triples, 38 doubles. Did it again, 22 home runs, 13 triples, 26 doubles, back-to-back years. Led the league in triple, led the league in RBIs. Guy had 41 home runs back-to-back as a Yankee. Went to the World Series twice. Solid dude, 344 home runs. Not the greatest hitter, at all. But I feel like he did enough, especially early on in his career, to at least get the nod for some Hall of Fame votes. Of course, Torrey Hunter, Andrew Jones, those some other guys, the outfielders, like rounding that list up. Pettit, Andy Whitehead, Pettit. Listen, say whatever you want about Pettit and the steroids and stuff like that, but Pettit did more than enough to deserve a Hall of Fame nod. He won't get it, but I mean, he's the 5-time World Series champ and the ALCS MVP. Like, give me a freaking break, bro. Like, Pettit did a lot, and he was a workhorse as well. He was a workhorse, led the league in game starts 3 times in his career. Wasn't a big strikeout guy, huge strikeout guy, but for a guy like that to have multiple 20-win seasons and you're not a huge strikeout guy, ERA is not the greatest, of course, but career rise 3.85. I mean, Pettit in the playoffs, playoff Pettit, playoff Andy. Of course, Manny. Again, I'm not looking at the whole steroid stuff. Manny, A-Rod, guys who were good way before all the allegations. Let's see. Of course, King Felix. I agree with Jerry's point.
Yeah.
I think maybe one other guy who may not get in because his career was kind of short. Tulowitzki. Troy Tulowitzki wasn't bad. Wasn't bad at all. His career was like a little short. It was a little short, but I don't think he'll make it. I think he's one of those guys that you can appreciate, but it was just too many short years by injuries, stuff like that. But for the most part, I'll say solidify. I agree with mostly everybody that you guys had. I would just definitely give a nod to Abreu and Granderson, first and foremost, and Andy Pettit. Those three guys to add on interchangeable with any guys that you have.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I mean, this is a really, this year's ballot was a really strong one. There's a case for a lot of, I would say not all of these guys, but I would say the majority of the people on the ballot do have a case. So yeah, you really can't go wrong. Especially if you're considering some who, some whose turn, might have been waiting their turn longer than others. Yeah, Tulowitzki probably. Tulowitzki, I don't know if he really. Not sure if he really did enough, especially when you consider like that he didn't he only hit like 225 home runs playing in Coors Field. So I feel like maybe that gets held against him a little more. The fact that he played like most of his career at Coors, and he didn't have as much pop in his bat, but. Yeah, I mean, Tulowitzki still definitely, a very good player overall. And
I think a lot of guys get Coors Field held against them, which fair or not, it's where you played at,
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then by the time he like left Coors Field and went elsewhere, it was when his like body was kind of breaking down. Before,
I also know that this stuff doesn't matter, but I would also add for Curtis Granderson, maybe the most liked player in the history of. I've never heard anybody say a bad word of it. Curtis Granderson played for the Yankees and then the Mets, and both fan bases love him.
Yep.
How many of those guys exist?
Right. Like
no, listen. That's it.
Yeah, like he left the Tigers to go to the Yankees, and no one really held that against him either. Granted, it was a trade, but usually in those situations, those players get a lot less love from
everywhere he went,
whatever small market team they leave.
Well, remember with Detroit, I think they went to the World Series in 03?
06.
Was it? 06.
03 they were really bad.
Right. And Granderson was so good early in his career. I remember following Granderson early in his career because this guy's, I always like the solid guys, like, 20 home runs, 10, 15 triples and then 30 something doubles. Like, to me, that's solid. Like if you're doing that, because what is a triple but an extended double, or maybe an opportunity like a long home run, right? So that means you're legging it out. And if you throw in 20 stolen bases, you bat like 280. To me, I'm in love. You know what I mean? Because you're doing every little thing. That's why I think I like Reyes a little bit more than I like Wright, because I think Reyes did like a whole lot, like in that regard. Even though nothing to knock against Wright, because Wright was a 30-30 guy in his career as well. But when Jose was Jose, it was like, hey, he could get you like 10, 15 home runs. He could get you he could lead the league in triples. He could be, second or first in doubles and get stolen bases. I love guys like that. So Granderson was one of those dudes. But then you meet him, because I got an opportunity to meet him, and the man is just a freaking moonbeam, bro. He's smiling every single time. He's shaking hands. He's kissing babies. Like, you can't say anything bad about Granderson. It's like, how in the hell is he not going to be a Hall of Famer in 2025? I believe he may not be first ballot if this is his first eligible year, but he's going to get in. He's definitely going to get in.
One of the best ambassadors for this. Like when someone would ask me, it's like, who would you point to as someone that is what's good about baseball? Curtis Granderson would be one of the, if not the first name, he's one of the very first names I would mention.
Yeah, it's Granderson. Absolutely.
And not to mention, I know Cespedes gets the credit for 2015 because he put a supercharger into this team. They're not in contention to do what they did if Curtis Granderson doesn't carry them for those first 3 months, and then was awesome in the playoffs. I think he had like 3 home runs in the World Series, and it turned out he had a broken wrist the whole time. So,
they wasted a good Granderson in the postseason.
Yeah, I think he's
always good over here.
His 2015 postseason probably gets overshadowed just because of like how nuclear Daniel Murphy went.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. That's a sad tale. But
and an all-time catch the next year in the wild card game that gets lost to history because they lost the game.
Right.
Yeah,
that's definitely crazy.
Yeah. So before we end the show, we do have to address what the hell is going on with Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is still not signed. And as of today, there were multiple reports saying that there were, talks between Pete Alonso and the Blue Jays. It seems like a few days ago, it seemed like the Mets kind of made it known without saying it out loud that they were, looked like they were probably moving on from Pete Alonso, but it seems like there's, still a chance he could end up back with the Mets. But, now the Blue Jays are involved. There's also some rumors that there's like a mystery West Coast team or something. Like, I don't know at this point. As of right now, looks like the possibility of Pete Alonso walking away from the Mets and going north of the border is becoming more and more real. So, I mean, what do you guys make of this? And if the Mets don't retain Pete Alonso, what do you think is the plan as far as pivoting? Like, are they gonna kind of just replace him from within and like have like Beatty and Vientos like platoon at first base, or like what does life without Pete Alonso look like for the Mets?
Can I just say one thing before Jerry takes this? You got too much dip in your chip, brother.
Yes.
You got too much dip in your chip.
Yeah.
I think I have to start it by quoting Cat Williams. I mean, between going to the University of Florida and now potentially aligning himself with Toronto, Pete, you have an unnatural allegiance to losers, and it's not like you. This was the bluff. This was the move. Toronto. You just had this magical October, and you want to go to them?
They're gonna pack his bags for him. Hey, all right, see you, buddy. Enjoy that.
Toronto would finally land a free agent. I mean, they did get Santander, but
my goodness!
And they gave a busted Jeff Hoffman 3 years. So good luck with that.
Yeah. The thing with Pete and this whole saga is, and I'll go based off of two things. I'll go based off of what I've heard from people who report on the Mets intimately, and a person who has met Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's a fraud, right? He's a fraud. There's something about Pete there's a side of Pete that he shows to everyone. That's the one who at the home run derby closing his eyes, looking he's meditating about to kiss his bat. That's the guy who puts on a great show. From what I've heard, he's not a locker room presence, right? This is on the baseball side of things. He's not a locker room presence. People like him, but he's not that, right? He's not a leader. And I've asked different people, and they're like, yeah, Pete is not the leader of that ball club. Lindor's the leader of that ball club. It's not Pete, right? Now, on a personal level, I know fans who've gone down for training, spring training and stuff like that, and Pete's not signing autographs until the cameras are on, and this will never be public outside of this podcast. No one's going to ever come out and say Pete Alonso's an asshole. It's not going to happen because there's no reason to. There's no reason to go out there and make Pete look bad, right? Because for the most part, he does what he needs to do that's necessary for the ball club. He does participate in the home run derby. He is a gopher or whatever. He coined LFGM. Like, Pete appears to be like a lovable guy. But during this whole ordeal, the Mets offered him 7 years. He said no. He signed him. He linked him with Boris. And Boris, we know Boris has a great relationship with the Mets. He offered him more money than Walker. He said no. And it's like, to quote Tyrese, what more do you want from me? Like, the Mets they gave you the most years, offer you the most money. You said no. You want to get paid more than Freddie Freeman. I'm sorry, Pete. I love you. I went to bat for you several times in the Discord, arguing with Kevin Lewis on the timeline about you being the better Met. And this is what you do to me, bro. This is what you do. You go out here and you're making yourself a spectacle. But the thing is, you can always come home. Come to your senses. Take the $93 million for 3 years. Wow us, win a World Series, and they get paid as a Met for the remaining of your years, which will be from 32 onward. But you go, you pack your bags and go up north to Toronto. You're dead to me. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, at that rate, I'd rather him stay with the Mets too. But
the thing that I was very confused by, at least, I mean, we've seen the different tactics that have come out during this. And at one point it was, oh, well, they're looking for something similar to what Prince Fielder got from Detroit. And two things on that front. And I say this as someone who loves Pete, but as much as I love Pete, I believe they have had the same amount of careers or the same amount of years by the time they hit free agency. And objectively, Prince was a better hitter, not just a better consistent power hitter, but a better overall hitter. I'm talking average on base and slugging. Prince's worst year is on par with Pete's best year, which was his rookie year in 2019. They're both reliable. They both play almost all 162 all the time. And the other thing that doesn't get taken into account for that was Detroit gave him that contract because they were in a title window and Victor Martinez was their first baseman. And in that offseason, he tore his ACL. So the Tigers basically had to go from the approach of, well, we just got to the ALCS. We have Miguel Cabrera. We have all these guys. We've got a shot to win right now. We can't waste a season where we've just got this hole at first base because Victor Martinez is hurt. We can't just leave that unattended. Prince Fielder's out there. Let's go get him. Now, it didn't work out. The Tigers didn't win. And the other part of the thing that doesn't get brought up with Prince Fielder's contract, and I'm not saying this is going to happen to Pete, obviously, but Prince had the neck issues pretty early on after that and had to retire pretty early. I think before his contract finished. So it's like, yeah, give 9 years to a guy who's older than Prince was when he signed that and isn't nearly as good of a hitter. Yeah, what sense does that make? And I would love for Pete to be back. I hope he does, but none of that baseball-wise would be a good move for the Mets.
Yeah, Pete wants a legacy contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. Like the Mets, so when we have the conversation about Pete versus Lindor and stuff like that, it's almost like the Wright Reyes thing for me because I know that David Wright was Captain America, right? And Captain America can't do no wrong. And I know Jose Reyes wasn't, but you had a feeling that Reyes was very like fun and people loved him. And he ended up being odd man out, going to Miami, getting the money, and Wright being, captain, my captain, staying here and putting on for the brand. You haven't had a guy like David Wright in a long time, right? So here comes Pete. Not too long after Aaron Judge does what he does, he comes, he belts 53 home runs and rookie of the year. Like the Mets haven't had a rookie of the year in how many years, right? I get where he's coming from. I am the rookie of the year. I broke the rookie record. I'm a 2-time home run derby champion. I am carrying the mantle of the Mets. Lindor can't carry that, right? Until last year, where Pete has his worst year, worst statistical year in the regular season. Lindor sacrifices. He calls a team meeting. He switches from his normal batting order in the lineup and goes to the leadoff position, and the Mets start winning a bunch of games. And of course, he calls out to Grimace and everything like that. And everybody's doing things. Vientos, everybody, everything's going great for the Mets. And in that cycle, Pete's being washed away slowly. Nothing crazy. Up until the playoffs, where Pete has his moment finally, and I mean, if you look at Pete's playoff numbers, they're solid. They're very solid playoff numbers for the 2 times they've gone, and this year being his best. But it kind of felt like it's a little bit too late, like a little not a little too late for you to join us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
yet and still they offered him that bag. He didn't want it, and they offered him another one. He didn't want it. Pete wants he wants that money to be like, hey, I'm the guy. I know Lindor's here and everything like that, and Lindor got a big contract from the Mets. I'm the guy. Pay me more than that. Put me, show me, how much I mean to you. And the Mets like, no, bro, like, no, we're not going to give you that. We're not going to. We offered you 7 years.
Yeah, like I know David Stearns is like kind of catching a lot of shit from some portions of the Mets fan base now because they haven't really been super active since Soto. Like, they missed out on Tanner Scott and some other like relief pitchers that they definitely could have used and things like that. So like, even though they did land Soto, I guess David Stearns is under like some heat from the Mets fans because like I guess there is still like more work to be done to round out the roster before spring training. But the Mets, like Stearns and his people are like a very forward thinking organization, and like it doesn't make sense to give a 9 or 10-year deal or some mega contract to Pete Alonso, who's he's coming off of his worst. He's coming off his worst season statistically. Yes, he had the good October, but that's a very small sample size. And if you're looking at giving someone a long-term deal, like what they're likely to sustain over the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever that contract ends up being, you're probably going to see a lot more of the former rather than the latter, as far as what you saw from Pete Alonso in 2024. Also, just kind of adding to the Pete Alonso being a fraud narrative, he also might not be the best teammate. I mean, he stole an all-star spot that Francisco Lindor deserved just so he could be in the home run derby. And
it's true.
I don't think that I don't think that's right.
I do understand all the baseball reasons for it, and they're valid. And if they do choose to move on, my only issue with it would be, all right, well, if this was going to be the move, what's the plan? If you're going to move Vientos over to first, cool, fine, I'm with that. But as we said right after the Soto signing, you've said now that you intend to win now. You can't punt one of those years being like, well, Beatty or Mauricio or somebody will take over third base. We'll be okay over there.
Yeah, no half measures.
If the plan here is, okay, when Pete goes, we're moving Vientos over to first, we'll give Alex Bregman 5 years. I think that would be the best allocation of resources, but all right, I can work with that. The other side of that I have heard, people have brought this up in the past day or two, is for as much as Steve Cohen's wanted to value like having a history for this team, and you see the retired numbers on my wall and all that, there have now been 2 homegrown Mets who became superstars under Steve Cohen, and we could be potentially looking at both of them leaving. Like, I mean, I get DeGrom was here before Steve, but he was also like, he left under Steve. He was still great under Steve, and he let him go. And right or wrong, that played out. And now there's this where Pete was the first Met superstar offensively after David Wright, because it was kind of like, all right, well, who's going to take the mantle from him? Mm-hmm. When David Wright walked away, it was, well, who's the guy now? Mm-hmm. And then he came right in. So, I mean, and we're in a better place now, obviously. Mm-hmm. But here he is, 10 home runs away from the franchise record, all of that. And he's going to go to, again, all of the baseball reasons make sense. I wouldn't be yelling if they did it. But the people are like, 2 of your most beloved players who came up through the system and have done all this for you, and you let them both leave. So what does that say for everybody else? I think it's a fair point to bring up.
I think the DeGrom situation is slightly different because I don't think they let him leave. I kind of feel like it's the Olerud situation where no matter what you threw, you were going to throw at Olerud. Olerud's like, I'm going to Seattle. Like, I'm not coming back. right?
Fair.
But with this situation with Pete, it's like they offered. So it doesn't look that bad for Steve Cohen because, you know, at one point in time, cooler heads have to prevail. Someone has to step in and say who's going to be the adult in the room. And Boris is the wrong person to have behind you if you're looking for someone to be the fucking adult in the room, because Boris' bottom line is going to be the money. And I don't know if it was Chris. I think it was Chris who mentioned this in the Discord. Boris has kind of been like 0 for 2 or 3 in his last contract negotiation in MLB. He's not the same. Like, people aren't scared of him anymore. You know, people are, hey,
last offseason.
Right. People aren't scared of him anymore. So it's like, hey, he said he has a great relationship with the Mets and Steve Cohen. Look, and of course, with Soto being, I think Soto's one of his guys, right?
Pretty sure.
Look, Pete, the best thing for you to do is just sign the contract. Whatever they give you, just sign the contract. You go to Toronto, you go to Rogers Center. I have family there. I've been there. You're a right-hander. It's not the worst place to hit, you know, baseballs, but it's a dome, right? The ball, you know, it may be one of those things like who like Delgado had good years there, Batista had good years there. You'll probably go there and maybe first year hit 45 home runs. You're not going to sniff the playoffs though. You're not going to be better than the Orioles. You're not going to be better than the Yankees. And you're going to be pissed off because the Yankees are going to be kicking the Blue Jays' ass every time you come to New York and get your ass bust. And if by some stroke of luck the Blue Jays are good enough to get to the playoffs, you're going to get your ass bust anyway. So you're
if they sign Pete Vlad Jr.'s gone, that's going to make your team worse. Right.
So and you're going to be, and listen, Toronto's a beautiful city. I don't know Pete Alonso personally. But it's almost like New York Junior. If you're good, people will love you. If you're not, you know, people won't. It's a multicultural, beautiful, clean New York, if you ask me, right? But for baseball, it's not the 90s, bro. Joe Carter's not walking through that door.
Right.
And the other option would be, well, Chicago's off the table, right? Who else? What else they were saying? Tampa going back home. Seattle. I mean, Seattle might be. It's still Safeco, right? Safeco, whatever. T-Mobile. T-Mobile, not T-Mobile. Yeah, T-Mobile Stadium. Yeah, that's a beautiful stadium too, by the way. T-Mobile Stadium is a beautiful stadium. Look, man, he's going to have his choice of nice looking stadiums to go play for and play baseball.
I don't know if he would want to go to Seattle as a power hitter. I mean, I think the best example you can look at is look at Adrian Beltre.
Yeah.
He had a 48 homer season right before he signed Seattle. His power numbers dip while he's there. The minute he leaves, those power numbers go right back up. That's what that part does. It suppresses power.
Pete is entering the Hassan Reddick portion of his contract negotiations.
I know that ain't good.
He'll be there. So at that rate, he'll show up like June 15th.
Right. he needs to just, you know, get over himself, sign a contract, and come play for a team that will be contending at the very least for for the NLCS at the very least, because the Dodgers, we know the Dodgers pretty much have clocked the automatic bid with all their team contracts, but with Pete and Soto and Lindor in the lineup, bro, I'll take that. I'll take that at least to beat the Braves. And if his brother is telling the truth, we got an Acuna too, man. You know, we got an Acuna too. So, you know, we'll see.
Even Hassan Reddick times, just don't be moving like Liam Cohen, Pete. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Listen, I know this is a baseball pod, and you know we're not supposed to talk about football, but man, how sucky can Balake be? You know what I mean? I know it's Balky, but I like to call him Balake. How sucky can Balake be as
Balake almost sounds like Malaka, which is like a Greek word for like a dumbass or like a jerk off. So that's like fitting.
How bad?
And churlish.
How bad of a GM can you be where you don't land? Well, he didn't land. Who did he land? It wasn't even Cohen. It was it was Cohen. He didn't land Cohen, and it was like, well, Sal's gonna be. Wait a minute, Sal, you're fired.
Ben Johnson's like, no, I'm good.
He said, Sal, but what? You fired. Because like how you missed out on Ben Johnson. But I think Ben Johnson was leveraging anyway, because I can't look at Jacksonville and just be like, he has a place to go. I don't some people see it otherwise. I personally don't think Trevor Lawrence is that good. He's just the best of a bad bunch. But people really look at the Jacksonville Jaguars as a great destination to be a coach. But Ben Johnson says, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to Chicago and play with Caleb Williams. And then remember even the whole thing with Khan was saying the head coach is going to report directly to me. I'm like, bro, just fire the GM. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Just fire the GM and finally, like, wait a minute, what? Balake, what are you doing? No Ben Johnson. You about to hire? Stop. You're fired.
The craziest part of that to me is the Jaguars saw him basically dissolve the Harbaugh 49ers inside 2 years. They saw all that and thought, no, this is exactly who we want.
Exactly who you
Trevor
want.
Lawrence era. We trust this guy.
Yeah, we've seen what you've done for others.
Yeah, you sure?
Like, you sure about that? Man, they got on the phone because I know Jerry was like, oh, thank God, Cohen is not going nowhere. And it's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
All of a sudden I got like 4 texts in a row. I'm like, no.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we appreciate you. We appreciate you still showing up tonight, Jerry. Obviously, between them and the Orlando Magic, definitely crash outs galore down in Tampa. But
yeah,
Chris, I'm doing all right. Have you checked the Metropolitan Division standings lately?
No, actually, I haven't.
I thought you might not.
Yeah.
Hey man, the Rangers are on a nice little winning streak right now. I appreciate they're figuring things out.
I know people are talking about the wild card and all that, but it's like
the Islanders have won 5 of their last 7, but like it doesn't matter because like the Rangers, Penguins, and like Blue Jackets, like all the teams that we need to lose keep winning too. So we're just stuck where we're at.
I'm still kind of the belief of like, yeah, it's been a good 2 weeks, but that can't undo the 2 months I saw. It's like,
yeah,
you burned a lot of trust with that. Like, I need to see you keep doing it. But
yeah, listen, like baseball, hockey, and basketball for me it all operates the same way. I don't care what you do the first 2-3 months of the season because a lot of teams start to fizzle out when it gets close. I'm appreciating the Rangers making a little push right now. Same with the Mets. The Mets didn't start the season that great, and then they made the push. Grimace Power and everything like that. The Cavaliers are good right now, but eventually they're going to fizzle out because the light's going to get too bright for Cleveland, and somebody's going to step like Boston or the Knicks and end up, being closer to a 1 seed. But I definitely appreciate the early drama going on with the Rangers because, a team that I thought was definitely going to win the Stanley Cup. Fizzled out, and it just felt like the residual just kept carrying on to this year. And they're figuring out something right now. Whatever they got figured out, we'll see. Hopefully, they get hot enough to, like you said, make the wild card or whatever it is with them. But
I mean, I know I've seen Fitz on Twitter float the theory of balance in the garden, where both the Rangers and the Knicks can't be great at the same time.
right.
I just want to point out the day the Rangers got knocked out by Florida, they were 23-33, and we've seen how the last 7 months have gone.
That is true.
That's a trade-off I'll live with.
That is true. But hey, man, listen, I'm glad whenever I see the Magic play and they win a game, I'm like, I'm wondering how, because that
decimated.
That roster has been completely destroyed by injury, and I feel so bad. But they must be one of the deepest teams if they're still in the playoff race. They're not even a playing team right now.
I was telling Chris before you jumped in, I'm like, I don't even know if we can, like, the trade deadline's in 2 weeks, and I don't even know if it can really do anything because this team's been fully healthy for like 3 whole games this year. I don't even know what they really are.
Right. Hey, we'll give you this washing machine, just please.
Does it work on the perimeter?
Right.
Okay, great. You have yourself a deal.
if there's an outlet close enough, then yeah.
Right. Hey man, so officially the Black Diamond Pod will no longer be. We all, if you have the logo, you should post it definitely. The logos, I should say. I'm getting the final ones this evening. So yeah, the debut, the 4 to 7 podcast. No more Black Diamond Pod. I personally love the train, but the thing is, you guys get all three. I'm giving you guys all three to do what you want. You put them however you want to do them. But officially, RIP to Black Diamond. Thank you guys for 31 episodes of great content, and let's continue to do this this year, man. Ascension Podcast Network, and let's go to some games. I know we're all scattered. Jerry's in Florida, you're in Pittsburgh. Yeah, but we gotta meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, we definitely gotta figure something out.
Come hell or high water, I will be at the David Wright retirement ceremony. I know that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In July, I might have to show up for that, even as a even not as a Yankee, not as a Met fan. I might have to show up for that.
You know what I haven't done, Chris? I haven't done a Subway Series. And I know it's not the same as when it first started.
This could be, if there was ever a year where it could be as close as it was, like
I think they've restored the feeling.
The heyday. I think this would be it. So maybe that's something we should shoot for. But so this is the end of Black Diamond, and in case you thanked us, but I do want to thank you, because obviously, I approached you when you had made it known that you were looking for a host and you were looking for a Yankee fan to join the pod. So like I threw my name in the hat, and you could have easily said no, like not you, but you gave us a shot, and I think we got a great thing going here, and I'm very excited to continue it here in 2025 under a new alias with new branding, and just lots of opportunities to continue to grow and continue to expand the Ascension Podcast Network. So couldn't be happier to be a part of it. So I appreciate you for giving me the green light and giving me this platform.
For sure, man. Listen, it was touchy for a minute because you were by yourself. We kept cycling like who we going to get, and I was like, wait a minute, man. One of the best guys, and I don't know if I ever told you this, Jerry, but Jerry's done our show. He does your show, and every time I hear Jerry talk, I'm like, man, yo, this guy's he just got it. And I keep forgetting, like, yo, he does play by play and everything like that, but. Listen, man, if there's one thing that I'm glad, trial and error happens, it was just figuring out the right pieces. And you guys are the right pieces to do this. And me and Kev wanted to do it too, but I was like, it's too much commitment for baseball, and I'm not as committed as I used to be. And I couldn't think of two other people who are more committed, more dedicated to the sport to sit there and talk baseball, once, twice, however many times a week. So definitely appreciate you. RIP, I'll pull one out for the BD pod.
and I want to salute Case for he had been in touch with me. He's mentioned I've gone on the Middle Initial pod, and over the past couple of years, he's always said, hey, we really want to get a baseball show going on the network. We'd love to have you. We're trying to work on the logistics of it. And just, hey, whenever you're ready to go for it, I'll be here. And I know Case has a lot of different things that he's, trying to keep up in the air at the same time. And I just figured, hey, if he gets to me, cool. But like, I understand he's got a lot to work with. But he always kept in touch with me about that. And he always made sure, like, hey, yeah, if this is ever something that we do you want in? I said, yeah, just send the word. And he got to me, I want to say like late June or early July last year. He said, hey, we've got this spot for you right now. Can you do it? Said, absolutely. So I'm appreciative of the dialogue. The Case is he's kept that line open. And, I always say the most important thing is, you go where you're wanted and you go where you're appreciated. And, Case has always made a point to, to be in touch with me, just talking about the Mets. And that made me feel like, okay, yeah, he didn't just have me on a couple times. Like he actually enjoys, conversing with me about this stuff, and he does want me to be a part of that, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, man, I have a mental vault. Sometimes I lock it too much, and I forget that I have resources and good people around me. And when I started paying, because it was really like I was panicking for Chris, because like, all right, we got a guy, we got something working on it. This guy disappears, and it's like, can I jump in? I was like, I want to, but like I'm doing this. Can Kev jump in? It's like, Kevin's doing this, and I'm just like, oh man, I'm leaving. Like I got Chris twisting in the wind with so many different people, and I was like, man, like K-Stink. Like who's he? I said, oh shoot, like Jerry, like the perfect candidate is Jerry. Like, what am I thinking? And then, like you said, we've always had conversations about you joining the network, and I tell people a lot of times when I have conversations, just in general having people on the pod, I always think long term. I never think, hey, if this works, if this is a good episode, they gotta come back. If it's a great episode, I gotta see how far they're willing to go with me. And Chris, just as important as Jerry, Chris has won. Like the thing with Chris is winning all our giveaway contests. Like I would throw a giveaway on the timeline, like, hey, what episode number did we do this? And Chris is like, oh, I know that one. And I'm like, anyone else? Chris? All right, Chris is the winner. Here's free tickets to I was giving away good stuff, you know what I mean? So it was just one of the things, like, man, Chris is always around, and I know he does his stuff with the All Gas Pod, and I did his show and everything like that. I was like, hey, Chris is the perfect candidate because he's the best ability is availability. And
I might have to change the name of that podcast too. I might have to change the name of that podcast too.
Right. Right. Whatever, the whole thing that's transpired with that. But Chris has always been a great guy. Jerry's been a great guy. So I know the show's in good hands and everything like that. And I'm glad to get you guys a new logo, a new name, and let's have fun 2025 and beyond, man. Definitely appreciate you guys. So
let's do it. Well, I think that's covers all the sappy stuff. So I think there's only one thing left to do. Pour one out for Black Diamond and for
yes,
last time ever.